Welcome to E3 Rehab. I'm Dr. Mark Sertica, physical therapist. Today, I'm going to walk through exercise progressions for individuals with a total hip replacement who want to return to higher level activities and function. In a previous video, I discussed my experience since I had a total hip replacement at the age of 19, which was 11 years ago. Of course, as a disclaimer, this is not medical advice. Consult with your surgeon or physical therapist prior to initiating a new exercise regimen. Also, it's important to note that everyone will have a different starting point, rate of progression, and end goal in mind. So think of this as a general framework or guideline rather than hard and fast rules. This is not going to be an all-encompassing video. There are a lot of exercises that you can do and routes that you can take, but I'm hoping that this simplifies the process and gives you a sense of direction. And we're going to do all of this without any equipment. So the first movement that we're going to look at is a squat to split squat progression. So what you're going to do is either set up with a chair or a couch and have it elevated to your needs. So I have two foam pads here. You can just as easily use pillows or towels. What I'm going to imagine doing as I sit down is thinking about that I don't want to crack or crush an egg that would be on top of this foam pad. So I'm going to think about sitting back nice and slowly and controlled, and then coming back up. So that's all you're doing is you're sitting to the chair, thinking about not cracking an egg and coming back up. When you feel confident with doing 3 sets of, let's say, 15 to 20 repetitions at a certain height, you're gonna remove a foam pad or pillow to make it lower, and then you'll do that again until you get to the height of a chair or the couch here. And then the same thing applies. You're gonna work towards 3 sets of 15 to 20 repetitions of this nice, slow, controlled squatting motion. After you have accomplished that, we're gonna work toward a split squat exercise. However, we're gonna have a reduced range of motion. So you're gonna stack up foam pads, pillows, towels, once again, as much as you need so that you can do the movement comfortably. So I'm setting up here, one foot in front of the other, and I'm just gonna drop this back knee to the foam pads here. So I'm going straight down and then back up. We look at it from the front. Same idea, coming down and back up. So if you can do that 3 sets, 15, 20 repetitions, you're gonna remove one foam pad, right? It's gonna make it a little bit harder. Then remove the other foam pad. Same thing, you can imagine, is there an egg on the ground? So you don't just collapse up and down, but you're thinking about, can I control that movement, tap that egg, and come back up? So you're gonna work through that progression. When you've mastered that, the last exercise in this progression is a rear foot elevated split squat, exactly how it sounds, how you're gonna elevate this back foot and then bring that back knee towards the ground. Once again, slow and controlled. Most of the weight will be on that front limb, okay? If we look at it from the side, my back foot is on a couch or a chair, and I'm coming down nice and slow and controlled. 3 sets of 15 to 20 repetitions. Now, why do I like this movement? One, I like the fact that it requires no equipment. However, if it becomes too easy, you can add dumbbells or kettlebells and hold weights in your hands to make it more challenging. I like the fact that it really strengthens your quad muscles and your hip muscles. I like that it's a kind of an asymmetric exercise, asymmetric load, because after a major surgery like a total hip replacement, it's likely that you're gonna have some side-to-side differences in strength and range of motion. So rather than doing a squat, progressing to the split squat can help tease through some of those asymmetries in strength and range of motion. And then finally, for some individuals with a hip replacement, like myself, is that if I go into really deep hip flexion, which occurs more commonly in the squat, that can be uncomfortable for my hip. However, with something like a split squat, I am able to change the position of my torso much easier, so that if this is uncomfortable on this front hip here, right? If this is uncomfortable, I can very easily bring my torso up, and that's gonna make it maybe less uncomfortable on that hip if I have that limited range of motion. Okay, so my second favorite, or what I would consider the most important movement, is gonna be like a step up and lateral step down, because I think it's gonna help with stairs, navigating curbs, navigating hills, things that you would do on a day-to-day basis. So I have my step here, right? You could stack some books up. If you have a staircase or steps around your home, you can use that just as easily. So the first one I'm gonna do is a step up, right? So I'm working this lead leg here, and all I'm gonna do is step up, back down, step up, back down. What you'll notice is that I'm trying not to push off this back leg as I'm coming up, right? I'm trying to put all of that weight through that lead leg. So that same thing, that right foot here in this example, I'm trying not to crack an egg either on the floor or on the step here, right? So I'm not pushing off, I'm just tapping and tapping. And so if this is too high, you can start on a lower surface. And if this gets too easy, you can bring it up by stacking more books or using a higher step. So for this, I'm gonna aim for 3 sets of about 12 to 15 repetitions. The other one that I really like is what's called kind of a lateral step down, where I'm gonna be on the side of the step, right? And all I'm gonna do is I'm not going to reach my hips or reach my foot for the floor. I'm just bending this knee and this hip so that I'm slowly lowering down, I'm tapping, and I'm coming right back up. So same thing, if this is too hard, go a little bit lower, a smaller step. If this is too easy, make that step a little bit higher. And you're gonna aim, once again, for about 12 to 15 repetitions on both of those exercises. That's really gonna work that single leg balance and kind of stability, and is actually gonna work the kind of lateral hip musculature quite a bit, which does get affected after a total hip replacement surgery in many cases. Okay, the next exercise that we're gonna do is an exercise that most people are familiar with, and that's just gonna be a bridge. That's gonna emphasize this glute strength, and if you've had like an anterior hip replacement or that anterior approach, that can actually serve as a really nice stretch for some of that tissue in the front. So all we're gonna do is start off on our back, lifting our hips as high as we can comfortably go, really squeezing the glutes, or thinking about, you know, squeezing a $100 bill back there, and then holding this position for 2 to 3 seconds. So you're gonna come down, come up, squeeze for 2 to 3 seconds, and the goal here is to aim for 15 to 20 repetitions. If you can do that, we're gonna move to a single leg variation where you're just gonna bring this other leg straight, and now you're gonna squeeze that one leg, hold for that 2 to 3 seconds, and then come back down. Aim for about 8 to 12 repetitions on that single leg. Now, if you go from the double limb variation and you're doing 20 repetitions, but you go to the single leg variation and you can only do 3 repetitions, that's completely okay. Start with what you can do as long as it's comfortable for you at that 3 repetitions, and work up to 8 to 12 repetitions. Once you've done that, we're gonna turn it into a hip thrust, which just means that your upper body is gonna be elevated on a chair or a couch. So kind of my upper back, shoulders will be on the couch here. My knees still bent, feet kind of close to my bottom. And then I'm just lifting my pelvis up toward the ceiling, squeezing my glutes again for 2 to 3 seconds, and coming back down, working up to 3 sets of 15 to 20. And then the last variation is a single leg variation where same thing, this other leg can be straight. You can hold on to it and you're just going to bridge up here or hip thrust up. So you can have this leg straight, you can have it here, whatever is comfortable for the opposite hip. And then you're gonna aim for 15 to 20 repetitions. Once again, if you wanna make it harder, you can add some weight on the hips. The next thing that we're gonna do is kind of like a deadlift progression, but remember, we're not really using weight here just for simplicity and for everybody watching at home who might not have weight. So this is how we're gonna start. We're gonna start with what we call a hip hinge. So I'm standing here, I'm just gonna sit my butt back, keeping my low back kind of relatively flat, and then just hinging forward. So I'm just gonna aim to get good at this movement for 8 to 12 repetitions here. And at the bottom here, I kind of feel a stretch in my hamstrings. Feels kind of good, and I'm coming back up. When you feel good about that movement, which shouldn't be too hard, we're gonna move to the next one where you're going to stagger your feet. So I'm gonna do right foot back, or right foot forward, left foot back. I'm just going to hinge, come back up, hinge, come back up. So it puts a little bit more load through this right leg. When I feel comfortable with 8 to 12 repetitions of that, now I'll actually tap. So I'm gonna hinge, tap, come back up, hinge, tap, come back up. What you'll notice is that I'm not tapping and putting all of my weight back down on that leg or coming back up and putting all that weight on that leg. I'm trying to keep the load on this right side. The next progression is gonna be a single leg Romanian deadlift. So slight bend in that lead leg. And now I'm gonna kick this other leg all the way back, hinge forward, and come up, all the way back, and come all the way up. The last one, we're gonna incorporate a knee drive. So I'm here, kicking it back, and then I'm driving this knee and this leg up toward the ceiling, right? So reaching back, driving this leg up toward the ceiling. Now, what's the benefit of that final movement? Well, we're working glutes, hamstrings, kind of some of these side glutes also, balance, kind of single leg stability, and we're getting some hip flexor strength on that opposite leg. So there's a lot going on with that movement. And if you can do 3 sets of 8 to 12 there, you're in a really good spot. The last thing that we're gonna do is a side plank progression. So you're gonna start on your side, either side, right? My forearm is kind of underneath my shoulder. And then I'm actually going to bend both of my knees. And I'm just gonna lift my hips off of the ground. So I'm trying to create kind of a nice straight line between my shoulder, hip, and knees here, even squeezing my glutes a bit. This is gonna work my lateral trunk musculature as well as the glutes. When you feel pretty comfortable with that, working your way up to 60 seconds, then we're gonna progress to the next movement. And that's gonna be just a regular side plank. Now, one, we can stagger the feet here if you need to make it a little bit easier to start. And then when you get a little bit more advanced, you can stack the feet and come up and hold that position. Once again, you're trying to create a straight line from shoulder, hips, all the way to your feet and ankles down there. The final one is gonna be a side plank thruster. So you're gonna set up, you're gonna lift your hips up, come back down, lift up, come back down, and repeat that movement. Now with the side plank, there is gonna be a component of shoulder strength required. And when you start any of the planks, once again, it's okay if you can only do 10 seconds. Take that, start with that, and build up. So you might go from 10 seconds to 1 week to 15 the next week, and it might take you 5 weeks to get to 60. And then when you start the long side plank with your On your feet, you might have to start back at that 10 seconds. And that's okay. We're not setting the time frame here. You're working through this as you're able to. And the reason I really like this exercise, once again, is that lateral hip musculature can really be affected in certain individuals who have a total hip replacement. So it just helps build that strength back up while also strengthening some of those abdominal muscles. So how do you put all of this together? Well, you'd be doing most of these exercises simultaneously. You wouldn't necessarily get all the way through the squat progression and then start your double limb bridges. You'd be doing them at the same time and working your way through as you're able to. For some people, these exercises might be more challenging than you actually need, so you can just stop whenever you've met your goals. For other individuals, you might eventually have to take it one step further by adding some weights or more challenging exercises, depending on what you're trying to return to. However, this is just a really, really good foundation. And a sample program might look something like this, where you're doing resistance training exercises 3 days a week with a day of rest in between. So perhaps that's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You're doing some of these exercises that I've just outlined, not necessarily doing them all on every single day. Additionally, it's really beneficial to do some kind of cardiovascular exercise like walking or cycling, working your way up to doing 30 minutes every single day. So maybe walking for 30 minutes on Monday, cycling for 30 minutes on Tuesday, and then continuing in that manner. And so when we combine those things, you have a very comprehensive program to get you started. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned how to create a simple, well-rounded program after something like a total hip replacement. If you want to learn more about the topic, watch that other video that I mentioned, or check out the blog on our website at e3rehab.com. I'll put that link in the description and it goes into great depth. Now, if you liked the video, please make sure you smash that like button, you subscribe, and if you have any comments, leave them below and I'll get around to answering them. Thanks, peace.